Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. We got a lot to talk about today, man. A lot of stuff happening. Ball is moving quickly in the college sports landscape. And Rob Browne here with you the next 2 hours, as we are every Monday through Saturday. Sidelines.live. Doug Dean checks in with us. First AU dose down in Birmingham. Frank Duffy at the airport in Kyiv in the Ukraine. No, I'm kidding. He's in Tampa, I believe. Just said that he wanted to be able to hop on if he could. So our roving correspondent, fresh from Mardi Gras, wow. And he's in Tampa for the getting ready for his gig as the stadium announcer for the Detroit Tigers 16 home games there in Lakeland, Florida. That's going to be fun. Second segment, Jimmy Ott, the Ott father, checks in, ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge and Bet Rivers podcast. Jimmy will talk a lot of LSU, betting lines, the horses, you name it. The Ott father will talk about it. Hour number 2, Coach's Wives section. Sheila Williams, wife of Coach Bobby Williams, will check in with us. Love, we had her on a few months ago. Really, really interesting, very revealing of what it's like being a coach's wife. And you're also the team mom. It's a hell of a role. And Sheila Williams is a first-class example of the coaches' wives, and you gotta have support, man. And she is rock solid. We'll talk with her, get insight from her. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. Will check in with us from the Classic City over in Athens. Talk about what's going on with Georgia. Hey, follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Batter up, Doug Dean, Frank Duffy. Doug, watching the color TV yesterday. We've been talking about it on this show for months, gentlemen, about, okay, what are we going to do? Oklahoma and Texas are coming in. I heard these apocalyptic predictions yesterday. College football as we know it is blah, blah, blah. You know what? How many times can we hear that? BS. It's not. It's going to be better than Ezra. Okay? Now, I did hear Paul Feinbaum yesterday made a point. The last 15 years, the biggest rivalry in the SEC has been Alabama-LSU. Is Auburn and Alabama, is that still a rivalry? I'm not sure, Doug.
Shut your mouth.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm going, I know LSU is a big game, but that Iron Bowl, last time I checked, it's a big rivalry.
Well, first of all, thank you for my dream and my personal goal 3 years ago when you would bring me on out of the bullpen was to finally get the starting pitching job. And I know the only reason that I got the starting role today is like 5 other guests canceled on you.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to take it anyway. And I always wanted to give that speech like you hear players, Rob and Duff, except for my mom, I couldn't be here right now.
Yes.
I guess my dad had a little to do with it.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but on a serious note, you're right, Rob. We fans we're creatures of habit, and we're everything. If there's change, then it's got to be apocalyptic, and it's going to mean the end of college football as we know it. But you do at least have to admit, Mr. Browne and Duff, good to see you there, Duff, that you have to admit that the degree of disruption and chaos is more than I can remember in 20 or 30 years. You agree, Duff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just everything's kind of topsy-turvy. But the one great thing, Doug, is, college football will sustain. It will be so excited 7 months from now to get this thing cranked up again. As it always is. It's like the old James Earl Jones soliloquy in the Field of Dreams. It just keeps rolling along, and it will.
Yeah, and let me kind of flesh out what we might delve into here, unless our distinguished show host, who has total veto authority, leads us down another. We can filibuster, can't we, Duff?
Yes, we can.
We're known to filibuster on this show sometimes.
if you're going to filibuster, at least make it good. Make it
That's
interesting.
right. That's right.
So there's two things that were breaking in the news over the weekend, or maybe late last week, and there's more than that, but I'll focus on these two, and we'll completely ignore basketball for a minute until I get to finally go down to Auburn, the Neville Arena tomorrow night for yet another must-win game for Bruce Pearl's Auburn Tigers. But I digress. So the two things that are very in front of us are obviously there's going to be some work behind the scenes in smoke-filled rooms headed up by Greg Sankey to determine what format. And I'll take a stab at that where I think it's inevitably got to go unless they really, in the words of Andy Staples, get stupid with the design of it. But the second thing is you got to love the greed of college football and TV executives who commit to the SEC what right at $1 billion coming in TV money. That was the first mistake. And then, one mistake cascades and dominoes into others. So now the executives have deemed it important to shorten the game of college football. Why, Duff and Rob? Because they're going to be running more ads to pay the bills for this $1 billion boondoggle, if you ask me. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad to have Texas and Oklahoma here, and glad that we'll get our athletic departments will get some financial relief in the form of TV money to pay all this NIL and facilities and everything we've got to do. But the biggie that's coming, getting paired with that, is the executives said, go figure out a way to shorten the game. And I'm okay with prohibiting consecutive timeouts, like how you ice a kicker at the end, but because it's kind of goofy to begin with. Half the time when you ice them, they end up making it. But then when they start messing with, in a fourth proposal, the clock continues to run after an incomplete pass once the ball is spotted. Come on, you're messing with my game of college football now, Rob.
Damn right. Don't mess with the rules. You can tinker with all the little tweaks of what happens when the clock is not running. But I don't want to go to pro football where it goes out of bounds and he starts running the clock. That's just not college football.
Weird.
I don't like that.
It's taken me 30 years to understand the 2-minute offense nuances, and now they're going to change that.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
I've been texting with Steve Shaw, the coordinator of NCAA officials, who lives in the Magic City where Doug Dean lives, about coming on, and he's been in a lot of meetings and all. And again, we're going to get him on here maybe later this week to try to explain it. But you know who brought that up to us last week was Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football.
Yep.
And again, for the record, for the 1 millionth time, I'm against anything that makes college sports more like pro sports.
Yeah. Rule of thumb. Rule of thumb.
That weird review of a pass completion that you have to split the damn atom to understand.
Yeah.
Keep that out. Keep it out.
And then now let me break the code here, Rob, and you tell me you can call a timeout when the boss over there says it's time for a commercial break. Speaking of greedy show. But
Mildred's over here right now. She's got everything under control. She's like, let Doug and Frank talk. Let them be nice.
Rob, I love you. But let me quote the great Andy Staples, who said, he's speaking to the SEC powers that be here. If you have Texas and Texas A&M in your league and you don't have them play football annually, you are stupid. Next one I really love. If you hijack the league schedule for almost 20 years to ensure Alabama and Tennessee play every season and then stop playing that series annually just when it's getting fun again, hey, to Auburn, you are stupid. If you stop playing the Deep South's oldest rivalry, Auburn-Georgia, annually so Mississippi State can schedule another easy win, you are stupid. They're not going to be stupid. It's got to go to 9 SEC.
Yes.
And we're each going to get 3 annual rivals. And now Auburn's will be, aren't we lucky, Duff? We get Georgia and Florida with combined 12 or more national championships in 20 years. So what Auburn should get by rule is 1 mulligan a year that loss doesn't count.
With that, I would totally agree. Yeah, you guys are going to have a brutal, if you keep traditional games, Y'all got a brutal schedule.
Yeah, we did.
Auburn's 3 permanent rivals would be Alabama,
Georgia,
Georgia,
and Florida.
And Florida.
And not the Louisiana State University.
I think it's Florida. I think traditionally it's actually more Florida.
Well, no.
Great
Auburn's oldest rivalry had been Georgia Tech, and then they dumped that after the '87 season. It then became Florida, which they dumped regularly after '02.
Yeah.
Alabama, there's the 41-year hiatus, '07 to '48. Wow. Georgia, the oldest.
The third one will be Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But I don't mean any slight to Rebel fans in saying that, but it just, gosh, to add Florida, they're not going to stay down forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, as the team that's always had to play Florida in the East, it's always a 50-50 call with them. That's no breather.
Yeah.
No. It is not. Well, Doug, okay. The Andy Staples is he's smart. I like him. I love it. And when I was watching on Paul Feinbaum yesterday, it was a writer from AL.com. I guess it's the delivery apocalyptic, it's the end of the world as we know it. It's not.
Yeah.
We reset, man. Hey, we've all been punched in the mouth, sucker punched, okay?
Yeah.
You get back up and you fight back. The fans, look, who owns college football? How many times does Buddy Martin have to say that?
Yeah.
But it's the fans. It's Frank. It's Doug. It's all of us. And enough of the trying to look. Texas and Texas A&M not playing each other is a crime.
It'd be insane. It'd be insane.
They got to do that. I mean, they'll be laughed out of the room if they don't do that.
Correct.
Here's one. There's some interesting, and they're easily found online, or hijacked from someone who has a premium subscription to The Athletic. But there was a survey, and it's got a valid sample of 2,000 plus fans from every SEC fan base. And the question was, for each school, who would you vote to be their rival number 1, rival number 2, and 3? And the only one and of course, Alabama, it was a blowout. They wanted the Iron Bowl to stay that's the number 1 rivalry. I'm sorry, but when you've got the most iconic finish to a game, the kick 6, you don't mess with that product, do you, Duff? And secondly, this would surprise me. The fans voted LSU, Duff, second, ahead of Tennessee as the preferred rival. So it may not matter if you get 3 annual rivals. That would be Alabama. And Auburn's obviously was Alabama, Georgia. And then Ole Miss came in third, shockingly.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing about us is that we're no one else's rival. That's the crazy thing. Because Ole Miss is really Mississippi State. The one we just have the biggest, we want to just beat the hell out of is Alabama. That's the one we circle every year. But y'all are their biggest rival. So it's kind of weird. We're the odd man out. Texas A&M is definitely going to be with Texas. That contrived Arkansas LSU thing never got off the ground. That boot was the biggest waste of gold-plated, bronze in the history of the world. So yeah, it's weird. We really don't have a natural rival.
Well, Duff,
funny.
Duff, you're a man without a country.
Much
help me, please. Help me, Lord.
Much like Jean Lafitte out on Barataria. He had the British and the Americans going back and forth. We just kind of sit this one out.
If only we'd get our butt kicked at least half the time playing LSU, but if only because I so dearly love going to Baton Rouge and hanging out with those crazy fans, I would welcome LSU as Auburn's third option. And I misspoke on that. The fans voted LSU as Auburn's third, not Ole Miss. The one, and you guys, in case you're wondering, man without a country, Duff, the survey said, obviously won't surprise you, first choice was Alabama for you guys. Then Texas A&M second. Guess who was third? Texas A&M in the vote.
Auburn was third.
Well, I mean, Auburn would be in the surveying. Auburn doesn't even show up as a favorite.
I'm shocked with how great our rivalry games are.
Yeah,
I mean, look,
I think part of it maybe, Duff, is that lately you usually beat us, and so I don't know that. The saving grace in all this, if they go to 9 games, tell me if y'all agree, the saving grace is you with the, I think it's the 7-1 format with 9 SEC games. You will play every single opponent, all 14 teams, no less than every other year.
Yeah, that's
So
probably what
nobody gets, a free ride for 5+ years.
Yeah. Well, go back to Uncle Charlie, my good friend who lives down in Monroe, Louisiana, rice country. We first started Sidelines in the fall of 2019. Uncle Charlie put together an algorithm. He's a Tennessee graduate. His family still has their season tickets coming up on 100 years now on the 50-yard line, about 8 rows from the field. He put an algorithm together that would allow for, if you stayed at an SEC school for 4 years, you would play at every stadium at least once, because what makes a conference is the interaction, the fan bases traveling to and from each other's schools, because we all know each other. I mean, I live in Memphis. Memphis is like, the New York City, man. You've got so many fan bases there that it's hard to pull, get like for the quarterback club in Birmingham. You've got Auburn in Alabama. In Memphis, you got University of Memphis, but you got Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Auburn, Alabama. There are a lot of Auburn and Alabama people in Memphis. A lot.
Memphis is the DMC.
We go to a 9-game format, and I think it's a foregone conclusion again, unless they go stupid, as Andy Staples said it.
Yeah.
You can forget seeing Auburn versus Michigan, Auburn versus Notre Dame regular season, LSU versus Ohio State regular season.
Hold those thoughts, Doug, because that's something I want to talk about. Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Brother Theodore, Larry Bud Melman, all back after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Say something about another one of our new sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis, and Camp Lee. Incredible. She is opening 3 of these gyms in the Memphis area. First one will open late March, maybe the first week of April, but right about that time. You can join now. Go on the website for the discounted membership rates. Here's the layout: 25 weight benches on one side of the studio with all the weights. In the middle, 45-minute boxing workouts. You talk about intense, hardcore.
Workout.
Yeah, engage both sides of the brain and get a great workout. And on the right side, 25 punching bags of your favorite official or coach or whoever that you want to hit. But it's going to be an incredible environment. rumbleboxinggym.com in Midtown Memphis, opening late March. Go to the website now, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. All right, Doug, you are rolling, as the great orators would say, waxing eloquently before that break about these big rivalries. I love the intersectional rivalries. Frank does. We all do. You go to 9. Is it time to say goodbye to those?
I don't know, but be careful how you pronounce intersectional. Rob, schedule me in Rumble Gym. If I can get like 3 months work in Rumble Gym, I'll be ready for my trip to Baton Rouge, Doug.
Hey, no, don't you worry. You with me, brother. You good.
Hey,
by the way, Frank,
I'm vouching for him. I'm vouching for this Dean guy. Leave him alone.
Yeah. Let me say something real quick too, Frank. April 1st over at Rhodes College, I help with the Sigma Nu chapter over there. Warren E. Bud Ritchie from Alexandria, former assistant dean of students at LSU for 18 years, close associate and good confidant of Dean Warmer, and Pierre Landash, my friend from Baton Rouge. We do one in the fall, one in the spring, our wild game dinners for the Sigma Nu chapter at Rhodes. And about every third word out of Bud Ritchie's mouth is "aye." We're doing a pastelaya. We're doing venison chili. We're doing duck poppers with cream cheese, bacon, Kaneka sausage. We're doing oh my goodness. We're doing jambalaya. We're doing gumbo, venison chili, venison burgers, man, boudin balls. So, Frank, if you're able to bring Bingle One there, you will be hail all ye to Frank Duffy.
I would love to.
Doug,
buddy.
you're welcome to come through.
I would love to do that. You know, it's kind of funny though. For 5 weeks, I'm going to be down here in Florida doing the Tiger games. So I'm going to need my fix of Louisiana food. And you know what's kind of funny? You know, I knew Bud Ritchie when he was one of the fraternity advisors on LSU campus.
Yeah.
He was the enemy. He was the guy that we were trying to skirt around and not get caught by. I've got some funny stories if I ever get there to swap with one Bud Ritchie about what he might not have known on the other side of all the shenanigans that was going on that he was having to stop.
Well, he's a great friend, and we're going to be eating well. Doug Dean, I love this. Talk about what you just said about these rivalries, what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, do you think a head coach, let's say you're hiring a coach, Auburn just went through that. And by the way, the early returns, we've only got recruiting to go by and putting a coaching staff together. But I would say Hugh Freeze is winning friends and influencing Auburn fans to give him a shot. But imagine with a 9-game SEC format, if you're a coach, I would try to get it in my contract that under no circumstances will the AD add a brutal non-conference, out-of-conference opponent when we're already playing, 9 rough SEC opponents. And you could say that Vanderbilt is that's a gimme, but it's any given year, not necessarily, as we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. Vanderbilt with Clark Lee, they changed. I think they crossed through the Maginot line late in the season, got 2 SEC wins. I don't care who you're playing. For Vanderbilt to get SEC wins is significant. But the untold story that we know about, but it needs to be reminded, Barton Simmons, one of those recruiting gurus who went to MBA, which is where Clark Lee, I think, went to MBA. And Barton was an all Ivy League safety, I think, at Yale. They're recruiting now a lot of these 2 and 3 stars that a lot of schools are ignoring from high school. They're not going heavy, with junior college or the portal, but guys, watch what they do at Vanderbilt. I'd love to have Clark Lee on here. I think
that was the easiest bet I had last year. The over and under on Vanderbilt wins was 2.5. I won that bet in week 4.
Wow.
They won 3 of their first 4 ball games. It was
and
crazy.
Rob, I have Rob as a fellow Catholic, not to make this about religious identification, but my lifelong dream, because I'm a closet Notre Dame fan, second only to Auburn, is a longer story behind that. I went to college up in Indiana, I'm a Subway fan at Auburn, but Notre Dame has been dodging Auburn for all time. Now that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But they played Georgia, they played other regular SEC opponents. Well, I can forget about that. It's going to have to be in the playoff if Auburn sees Notre Dame going forward.
Yeah, the SEC schedule is just going to be too tough to put that big out of conference game on. It's just going to naturally go that way. And look, you come out of a 9-game run in the SEC, and with 1 or 2 or no losses, more than likely you're going to make the playoffs. The expanded playoffs, you're going to make them.
Yeah, and you know what else to underscore your point, Duff, is there was a time we remember the ludicrous BCS computers. I'd like to meet the nerd that programmed that. But then again, sometimes I think I might take the computers back over the selection committee with their eye test. We don't like these findings, so we're going to add the eye test. But there's no reason to worry a great deal about your strength of schedule if you're in the SEC. It's baked in, and now that you've got 12-team playoff, strength of schedule can take care of itself. All you got to do is, I guess, get through the season with only 2 blemishes in your.
That's about right. I think that's the case. Yeah.
You know, something.
3 losses, you're in trouble. 2, you're still in the game.
Yep.
Guys, last Wednesday we had Anwar Richardson, orangebloods.com, on with us, who covers Texas from Austin.
Yeah,
and remember that, Doug? That's why I wanted you to remember. He said about the future schedule that Texas has, a home and home with Michigan and a home and home with Ohio State. There may be some changing going on there, but wow, you talk about biting off more than you might be able to chew. That's an ambitious schedule.
Absolutely. And then you think about, we've talked about the importance from the point of view of athletic directors and the people that run these soon-to-be 16 SEC programs. You still want to sell season premium packages will be easily sold. That's what I'm hearing from John Cohen at Auburn, that there's a remarkable demand for skyboxes, but less a sort of declining demand for the usual, Joe Six-pack seat. So if you're making the game longer to sell ads, now, I know he's saying shorten the game itself, but with TV timeouts, you're still going to be sitting in 90-degree weather. So what are the implications of all this and in the effort to get people to come to games?
You know what I would say, if it was a publicly traded company, the tailgate guys that put up all these tailgate tents, because now you've got 90,000 people ideally inside of Jordan-Hare Stadium, or 102 at Bryant-Denny, although they're going to reduce Bryant-Denny by 2,000 or 3,000. About the premium seating, it's the outside experience. And most of these schools have been doing this for the last 15 or 20 years. The game day experience, you got to invest in that. But I think the biggest thing is, if you want to get people if you're going to sell more premium seating, lower the general ticket prices. So, because you've got to think about the annuitization of your fan bases out there, guys. Get the masses of people there. And if you want to have, premium seating, sit on a lazy boy chair, why not do it at the game instead of your den?
Correct. And those boxes now, with all the food and the drinks and the accoutrement, man, I mean, those are incredible. But for the general public, I mean, I frankly prefer sitting out in the bowl. I mean, I like sitting out there. I like being with the crowd. I like to be able to affect the game. Look, Tiger Stadium doesn't get its reputation for being loud at night by the crowd that's sitting behind the glass window. We love being.
Oh, Frank, you remember what happened at the Auburn LSU game when you and I went up to Frank's to Doug's luxury box, and we weren't wearing ascots, and we couldn't go in.
Hey, let me tell you something. Doug and I sat together in that end zone, and let me tell you something. I love being out there. The feel of the game, the crowd, the bands. I love
Jeff, I know your deal. When you're in Death Valley, you want a secondary high from that bourbon smell.
Let me tell you, I think I instead of being a recipient, I think I've been one of the providers for that more than I know I was on Sunday night riding that parade in Bacchus. Let me tell you, my 4:30 wake up call to fly here to Tampa yesterday morning at 7:30 came at 4:30. I didn't get off the float till 1:30. Oh my God, rough night, man! Holy mackerel!
Well, at least your flight wasn't canceled and you didn't have to ride the Greyhound.
Oh my gosh! Well, I wouldn't have made it. We had our first dress rehearsal for our first major league game on Saturday in spring training. We had it yesterday, and I joked with him. I said, I don't know if my throat's going to be able to hold up through the bourbon residue. I said, but if you like the way I sound today, it'll be much better going forward.
Yeah. Hey guys, hey, hang on if you can, Doug. The Ott father, Jimmy Ott from ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge, is on here with us. Now, Frank, I'm sure Jimmy has a lot of sympathy for you and Doug. He being down in Baton Rouge, Frank, you just getting out of New Orleans alive from Mardi Gras. But Doug, Frank, here he is, Jimmy Ott. Let's go. Let's talk all things LSU, Bet Rivers podcast, whatever's on your mind. But we love having you. And thanks. Let's go.
Hey man, how you guys doing? Y'all are braver than me going down to New Orleans these days. So I mean,
Happy Mardi Gras, Jimmy.
happy Mardi Gras, guys too, man. Growing up in New Orleans, a lot of fun, but kind of keep my my distance these days. It's all good. Have my fill. So
So it's a little subdued in Baton Rouge. I know, man. I know.
Hey, Jimmy Ott, this is Doug Dean in Birmingham. Great to see you and hear you. And I just wanted to tell you before I sign off that you are by far, Duff knows I love him, but you are by far one of my favorite guests that Rob has on the show. And I'm gonna seek your sage guidance should I decide to wager a time or two this fall.
well, ain't guaranteeing anything. If I could pick all winners, I wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. But
Yeah, you would.
I don't.
I'd be on an island somewhere. That's all. But no, man, I got a great group of handicappers nationally that assembled, and they're good people, man, and they work hard. It's just like anything else. Guarantees, but the percentages and things, just the other day, I'll give you an example. I mean, we watch Florida a lot, and I mean, Castleton's such a big part of what they do. Arkansas is hungry. They have a tough stretch coming. They can't afford a loss. We're willing to lay that 8.5 points on Saturday, and they covered easily. Those are the fine ones. It ton of it comes down to flat out luck, but a little hard work, helps out, in the long run as well. So I'll tell you one thing we've had some luck in, and they whine about it every year in Vegas, is the draft, because it is information based. It is, and some books are slower to respond to others or react, as the information comes in. And yeah, and the other one we had a lot of luck with, it was more of a headache than ever. But the bowl games this year, the Monarch Bowls, the real early ones, it was such a headache to find out who's playing, who's not. The UAB leading rusher, this guy's not. The whole coach took 13 guys with him. But man, it was harder to do your research, but easier to pick than ever. Man, when it got into the real games, I'm like, man, this is hard. Where's those easy ones? Those games played in the Bahamas, in front of 200 and everything else. So, hard work and, surrounding yourself with good people, it helps.
I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, and Frank and Doug and
Hey boys, I got to run. My plane's boarding. Good talking to y'all.
Have a safe flight. Thank you. Doug, I like the question you talk about on the betting lines. And Jimmy, I get a lot of people when you're on texting me going, man, this guy is good, because like you said he doesn't think that he knows everything. He consults with a lot of really smart people. I'm glad you explained that process. I got 4 kids, and man, my boys, that they love to bet, like little, $5, $10, but I think probably more than that, but everybody's doing it. But what are some guidelines, like, some, I guess, guardrails that you advise people to stay within if they want to wager on sports? Because you can bet on coin toss and everything.
Yeah, on the mobile sites, you can even, put guards. And listen, all of this is done responsibly. All of it's done with discretionary income. You want to go hunting, you want to go fishing, you want to go, to the beach, you want to, play a few games. I mean, it's all discretionary. Let's make that perfectly clear.
Yeah.
And the one good thing about the mobile sites, they are pretty responsible in the fact that you cannot put a deposit on a credit card. It has to be tangible funds. But it's just watching. I mean, if you see, man, that score was misleading. I mean, how many games have we watched where you're like, that score was closer than that final score? Well, the final scores determine, and branding determine the point spreads on the games. And it's like, Rob, it's like the stock market. Okay, um, TCU had the second game back with Mike Miles Jr. Now they lost. They won by 25 his first game back. He's the Big 12 Conference Player of the Year, preseason Player of the Year. He had been out for probably got hurt in Starkville in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, the first 4 minutes, and they've lost every 5 out of 6 without him. And they couldn't buy a bucket at the rim last night. They lost, but that's
Jimmy, hold that thought. Hold that thought, because this makes a lot. We're going to take a quick break, come back, because you're making a lot of sense here. And I think a lot of people want to hear this answer right after this. Yeah, Jimmy, you were saying some stuff that made a lot of sense before the break. Let's keep going.
Yeah, what I'm talking about, it's like finding a stock right as it's about to rise. Find a stock right as it's about to roll. So what you want to do is you want to find a team that has a great reputation. A good example this year is North Carolina, preseason number 1. Well, they're 0-9 against quad 1 teams, this year. So, I mean, they're just not as good. But, is now that you have such a long sample size, well, the odds makers have probably caught up. It takes them about 4 or 5 games sometimes on these streaks to catch up.
Yeah.
Mississippi State is a good example. They started out 1-7 in the league. Well, 5 of the 7 losses were 2 to Alabama, 2 to Tennessee, and 1 at Auburn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's pretty doggone tough. And so their terrible start in conference play, a lot was schedule related. I mean, Tennessee and Alabama, 2 of the top 3 NET teams in college basketball.
Yeah.
So, you're trying to find situations, Justin Moore, who's the only remaining member from Villanova's Final Four team a couple of years ago. He is, he is back for now his 6th game. Now it caught up with him. Vandy, Lem Robbins is a great example.
Yeah.
I mean, difference maker. I mean, he's their Castleton. I mean, they won the first game. They got drilled by Alabama, but then they played really well. They didn't cover because they missed 2 front ends of 1-1 against Ole Miss. They only won by 3 instead of 4. But man, they have rolled since, and beaten Tennessee. They went again against Auburn on Saturday. So kind of catching those teams as and you've got that small window, Rob, before the odds makers are going to catch up. So it's teams with kind of bad teams that are out to get better and get on a roll for whatever reasons. And I gave you some of the reasons, and maybe stronger teams that are maybe about to go on a slide for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense with my background as 32 years as a financial advisor is that you look at teams, they make you mad, and you just say, I'm done with them. There's a term in the stock market when things are just going to pieces, everybody's wanting to sell everything. It's like you're throwing out the babies with the bathwater. You got to be very careful about that. And you just hit on a very timely topic, and that's Vanderbilt basketball. Watch what Jerry Stackhouse is doing. We had Joe Klein on the show with us last Tuesday from Columbia, and the big guy was up there. As soon as he got off from his segment on Sidelines, he was going in the next room to interview Jerry Stackhouse before they played South Carolina in Columbia, and they just pounded them. I think Vanderbilt's won 6 of their last 7 or something like that. You're really adept at finding these trends. And in the stock market, again, it's very similar. You look at the 200-day moving average. You look for dips. You look for buying opportunities. Talk about a couple of teams that you really like. And then I want to ask you a question about LSU that was real timely from something that happened yesterday.
I think the stocks also, or you really draw maybe even a better comparison. What you're talking about too, as far is the futures market
Yeah.
in sports gambling, where you're talking about the odds to win this division fluctuate over the course of the season. The New Orleans Pelicans, they're number one seed at one time, then they're down to the ninth seed in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
After they go on a slide and some things like that. Do you panic or will they recover? Do you get you buy low, when they does look a little bit where everybody else is selling off,
Yeah.
But the other thing is a friend of mine, Randy McKay's professional NFL handicapper from Denver, and he has his own power ratings for the coaches too. And we talked to a couple of odds makers about this XFL stuff,
Yeah.
and they said it's just strictly two things. They power rated coaches and quarterbacks, and letting just kind of seeing where the rest kind of fall. But he does that, and I'll tell you one when we're talking about futures, and a great example last year is just ownership in the NFL. And I mean, you watch it what Arizona's doing, and you watch it with. I mean, how do the Los Angeles Chargers go cheap and not scoop up Sean Payton to work with Justin Herbert?
Yeah.
I mean, how do they keep this guy who is playing in a meaningless game on the last game of the season with a playoff game the next week? A guy who has an injury, and Mike Williams, a kid from Clemson, a wide receiver, he plays him. He can't even make the trip. You don't think that cost him in that game? I mean, just fireable offenses. But they're too cheap because they didn't want to pay the coach's buyout. I'm like, don't buy Auburn. I can tell you that. You'll go bad if you're not into paying buyouts. Don't go buy Auburn team. So it's in the Pittsburgh Steelers, just the stability that they have. Mike Tom, man, they had a horrible offensive line. They're playing with a rookie quarterback. When first they're going to roll out Trubisky for about 5 to 7 games. He's not going to do it. They're going to roll out with the rookie. They wind up having a winning season. I mean, it's unbelievable, because the stability of their ownership. And my buddy Charles Hannegriff, who's been a colleague of mine for over 30 years in Baton Rouge, his favorite line is weak at the all-important position of ownership. So, that comes into into college programs, the branding, just the more, not so much ownership, but I would say administrative support. What's it mean to your school to win ball games? Are you going to put the piece of, and we look at budget, we dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
You and I, when we're talking about comparing why this team is winning, why is this team? Louisville basketball, horrible. Played last night against Duke. 4-24. Rob, they're top three in basketball budget every year. They'll be back.
Yeah.
So it's just every little bit counts when you're breaking this down, as you know.
Yeah. No, you're right, and that's what's so important. You just said how important it is. How important is it to the respective university that they win those games? Well, you look at fundraising. I bet it's a similar situation at LSU as it is at Auburn, like with Tigers Unlimited. They raise more money in the down years than the good years. I'd say most of the time, because people are like going, "Hey, we if we slip, man, we're out of the league."
How's the new shiny facility on the SEC block, huh?
Yeah, the Starship Enterprise. That's it. I mean, I think they do everything but breathe and brush your teeth for you. That is so nice. But Jimmy, there was another thing that I think is really timely. Is this stuff we've been talking about it on the show, as you have, I'm sure, on your show in Baton Rouge every day, about the future scheduling in the SEC. And they did surveys of the rivals, and Frank Duffy, is a big LSU guy, and Doug with the AU Dose in Birmingham. Alabama, or LSU's biggest rival, they want to beat Alabama. And then after that, it was Texas A&M I'm not sure who was third, but Auburn was, of course, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. LSU has become so important to Auburn as a rival. I think it's just because it's fun, and I think the fan bases are very similar. I love going to Baton Rouge. I love it when the LSU people come to Auburn. We have a lot of fun with them. I got a lot of LSU friends. I don't want to see us lose those. What about you?
I can't see the Auburn LSU series surviving on a regular basis. I mean, if you're gonna make this thing work, I mean, the rivalries are big. Are you going to try and have some sort of competitive balance? The league is basically split. Half stronger resource, bigger resource teams, bigger budget teams, and not so in the lower resource teams. Auburn, Alabama, LSU's of the world versus the Ole Miss, Mississippi States, and Kentucky's of the world. It's just that simple. I mean, we've done it for a long time. We know who has the budget, who doesn't. The interesting thing is you picking up two big budget teams and programs in Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Geography is going to play a little bit of part in that, but they're gonna do 9 games and probably three permanents and 6 rotators. Alabama and Auburn is the most valued series, rivalry, whatever. I think that's safe. What after that? Is it Alabama, Tennessee? Is it Auburn, Georgia? Some people think Auburn, Georgia might go by the wayside. Is it Georgia, Florida? Georgia, Florida has to play. They have to play.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Florida. Is it Tennessee, Georgia? I mean, you get it somewhere along the line, and I think LSU geographically is going to be pulled at least by one of the Texas schools.
Yes.
So, Alabama, LSU is now. Are we? And I think we are, because Tennessee's underperformed forever as a big budget program.
Yes.
Are they back now to where we are comfortable putting them in? And are you going to where Alabama carries so much stroke in Birmingham? Or are they going to play 3 heavy hitters and no permanents on this? You going to put them with Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU? Well, that's 3 heavyweights. That's 3 teams from the upper division. So I'm sure they're going to have something to say about that, as long as Nick Saban's there, where he likes loaded deck. We know that. So there's a little finesse. I've got an idea. The obvious ones are going to be there. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama. LSU's kind of stuck. And whoever LSU plays, and now that Texas is in, because LSU A&M made sense. Well, now Texas, we know they hate them more than LSU. So and what do you want to keep as far as Texas, Oklahoma? Do you want to throw that away? Probably not.
No.
So you're going to play Texas and LSU and give Texas 3 big boys, and A&M, Oklahoma, and LSU. So there's going to be some give and take, some compromise somewhere along the way. Our biggest thing is, damn it, Tennessee is terrible for 12 years. LSU's their head with Florida every year, and so how level is that? Well, it's not. In the 2000s, LSU and Florida were the best programs in the whole league. They're playing each other as your permanent non-division. Well, so, and I understand things can be cyclical, and Tennessee run where they're stronger, than Florida for a while. But the balance between level playing field and historical series, I want them to hold on. I'm kind of stuck in the era where it was 10 before the addition of Arkansas and South Carolina. For some reason, they don't quite feel as SEC as the other 10, and certainly Oklahoma and Texas now as well, although they bring some juice, to these series.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but that's my thing. I mean, what do you guys have been talking about?
Same. We're with you. We don't want to see these traditional rivals go by the wayside. And Tennessee, right? I mean, are they back? Let's look historically. since 1963, there have been only 6 schools in the last 60 years that have won the SEC football championship: Auburn, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Georgia, and Tennessee. So Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU. Those 6. Ole Miss's last SEC championship was 1963. They had won national championships in 59, 60, and 62. So even with increased money and everything, Ole Miss is the only school in the SEC West, traditional, that A&M hadn't made it either. But Ole Miss has yet to get to Atlanta.
Right.
Even Mississippi State did. So these rivalries, Auburn wanted the Georgia series moved from mid-November, where they would then have an easy team in Alabama, to now they take the Georgia game to late September, early October. But then you throw Texas A&M in there. They might as well just go back and put Georgia where they were all along. And now we got Texas and OU coming in. That's going to change things. But what makes the SEC special is the interaction, the fan bases traveling to each other's schools. You cannot find these atmospheres at other leagues when they're scattered all over the country. Southern Cal fans, good luck tailgating to Rutgers or Michigan State or Penn State. That's not that smart, but 70% of the TVs in the country are in the Pac-12 footprint. At least the SEC is all connected.
They're desperate. And, UCLA's athletic department, it was $100 million in debt.
Yeah.
$100 million in debt. Okay. So the SEC programs are not in desperate situations. So they can, maintain and preserve some of these things that are, and I think the league is well aware of, the special aspects of these series. I think they're aware. I think they've also been banged on a little bit, as far as, I know the LSU people have been on it for a long time, to try and level the playing field of the rotators. And it just, they didn't have the numbers. So now that when you're making a significant change, with the structure of your league, the numbers of your league, you got to do something, so, and my goodness, if it drops another rent-a-win, give me another conference game and drop another rent-a-win. God bless. I mean, it's the rent-a-wins in college football. I understand all the coaches want it. They want a light on their team. They don't want to, schedule any tougher. It's a physical sport. It lends itself to, getting banged up if you schedule too tough. But the rent-a-wins are, it's just, you only got 12 games a year. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And, what about even a crazy idea, making the spring game in football where you play, say, LSU plays Michigan for their spring game, or Auburn plays at Southern Cal, or Florida plays at Washington.
We've talked about that before. It would have to be scrimmage format, but I think it would get a lot more juice than banging against each other. Yeah. So because the one thing about the spring, though, that the veterans hate it, they kind of skip it.
They hate it.
It also, any type of reps. One thing is a lot of high schools have gotten away with it. And that was where you could really evaluate your kids and see how some wanted it. But some are so nervous, they don't even hit in the spring. We can't hit during the season as much. So, it is a way to evaluate. Yeah, I would much rather see that, than watching, a spring game with the two teams, against each other.
Yeah, where the coaches are out there, in the backfield and on the field, stopping all the plays. About to head into a break. When we come back, I got another question, and I want you to let people know how they can follow you, because lots of people asking, man, I want to follow Jimmy. I like his style. I like the way he's saying, look, got to have guardrails. Do this. It's just like me. I never want to deal with a client who I see making cash advances in the casino. Be responsible, but don't try to cover your stock trade with that one. We'll be right back.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. One more thing before we go. Again, we talked about it a little bit last week. Tony Barnhart was on with us and brought it up, possibility of trying to shorten the game, not stopping the clock on incomplete passes. What do you think about that?
Well, it's just, everybody's, there are more snaps per game, Rob, and, more snaps, lend itself to, more injuries, and it's all about the tempo. I mean, Tennessee, go and see how many snaps a game they were averaging under Brooks Jones, and see how many they're doing under Josh Heupel. So you're getting a full game. I can tell you where the betting aspects of these college football totals are out the roof, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they really get in. So the interesting thing is Heupel was able to survive for the most part last year in this league. We know Gus Malzahn came into this league with fastest tempo that he could. I mean, it was tempo. Well, he learned pretty quick. He had to kind of alter that because his defensive front by the fourth or fifth game was, he was in his three deeps.
Yes.
So, it's still interesting, but there's so many, and it's a little bit of a talent neutralizer. The wishbone has become the spread, and the spread has also incorporated into tempo and going fast to try and neutralize just your lack of physical power up front. Yeah. And I can see it probably coming. The snaps are way up. Tennessee in a bowl game against Purdue, they had over 100 snaps. I mean, it should be like about 70, something like that.
Yeah. So you start stretching after about 40 plays, a defensive lineman is going to start getting winded. You better be 2 and 3 deep across that front seven. And you look at the national championship run LSU had, Auburn, some of these teams, their defense was giving up 25, 27 points a game. Historically, that's all fourth or fifth worst maybe the worst in school history, but it comes with the national championship because of the tempo.
Yeah, the game has changed. The game has changed, and so they're trying to, before it was, the last change we made to the clock was, okay, you're out of bounds, but then when they spot it, okay, then it starts again. Well, it used to just stop completely. So now they're talking about, even continuing it with minus the last 5 minutes of the half, or minus the last 2 minutes of the half. So I know this is an experimental rule with the XFL that's going on right now as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're block until the last 2 minutes of each half as well.
That'll be fun to watch. Jimmy, love having you on here, man. This is great stuff. It's educational too, because betting is on fire, but being responsible. No, you're also a great dad. Hope your son's baseball career is going well. So let people know how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on again next week.
Man, wherever you find your podcast, it's called Sports Better's Paradise. So you outdoorsmen could remember that one easily. It's Sports Better's Paradise, and wherever you find your podcast, and once you pop us in one time, you'll get that every time we drop one. We drop about 4 or 5 a week, and I have different handicappers from around the country with different sports and different specialties. And then also, on my show, it's 1045 ESPN.com, ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge. You can follow me on Twitter at JimmyYacht1045.
Where are you eating today?
Doe's Eat Place. It was started at a steak place. It started in Mississippi. I think Greenville, Mississippi.
Greenville, Mississippi. Oh, yeah, we got it in Memphis.
Okay. All right. So,
Woo!
play with some fries and a salad. Watching some basketball tonight. So,
all right, Jimmy, thank you so much, man. Have a great week.
all right, guys, you take care.
You too. That is the Ott father, Jimmy Ott. Tell you what, guy knows what he's talking about. We've been having him on here since we started the show back in the fall of 2019, and he really understands what goes into making your picks. So I suggest you get on board with his service. Hey, let me say something real quick. We love doing this show. We need your support, need help as we continue to grow. We are really growing. Do us a favor. Go to the website, www.sidelines.live. At the top of the website, there's an orange P, Patreon, $5, $10 a month. It's all it takes. It's really easy. So easy, even my father and Jethro Bodine and Uncle Jed can do it. I did it a couple of nights ago. It is very simple. We love this show. We do 25, 26 shows a month, 2 hours each, putting a lot of content out. If it's worth 40, 45 cents a show to you, which we think it is, we love your help on Patreon. Hit that orange P at the top of the sidelines.live website. Thank you so much for listening. Man, got our next guest, Sheila Williams. What's it like being the wife of a coach, Coach Bobby Williams? We've been doing this for a long time, and you get down to it. You cannot be successful as a head coach, as an assistant, and then have your son involved in coaching unless you got a great wife, a great mom. My parents have been married now since 19. Yeah. Hey, if you can turn it off in the background, Sheila, so we don't get an echo. There we go. Hey, my parents have been married over 60 years. I see firsthand. We had Sheila Williams on back last summer. Incredible insight. Again, she's been at Michigan State. They've been with Coach Saban probably 18 years. She's got sons and son-in-laws at Oregon and Utah and now Mississippi State. Chad Bumpus is at Mississippi State. A lot to learn from Sheila Williams. And Sheila, welcome to Sidelines. Appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Good morning. Good morning. I know I'm not computer savvy, so hope I'm coming through.
No, you did. You got it figured out. What's fun is when you go on StreamYard like we are, and I'm getting a lot of questions already. Just some questions for Sheila. Talk about the rivals that you all have faced over the years in your career. And, you and your husband, Bobby, have been at this for a while. College football, it keeps changing, but it keeps getting better. And you can't sleep long because something else will come about. But those rivalries, they get better down through the years.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on, Rob. I really appreciate this. I consider myself a seasoned wife, which means over 36 years at this. So I've been in the beginning of it when the new school, the old school, the middle school, and now the new school, which is with, that's a whole nother conversation with this portal and NIL and all that other kind of stuff. So that's kind of crazy. But the rival games, the one that sticks out right now for me is at Michigan State. We were at Michigan State 14 years, 5 with Coach Perlis, who got us, started being Spartans where we started in. Then Coach Saban came and we retained for another 5. And then my husband went on to be the head coach for a few seasons. So our big rival was with Michigan. And I know in the news you all have all seen in the last 2 weeks the shooting that happened at Michigan State, and it's something about being green. That Michigan State was my first being thrown and thrust into this college world, really, as a wife and a young mom. So Michigan State, Michigan was always big brother, little brother kind of thing, and under Coach D'Antonio and Coach, it's kind of turned a little bit under Coach Tucker, but Coach Izzo, these people go back. I mean, my kids were raised at Michigan State, so It's really a special place being born and raised in Detroit too. So that rival was just always deep, but after this shooting this last week, and that's what it means to be a part of a college football sincere, aside from what's going on the gridiron, and how Michigan, Coach Izzo and Loopy Izzo are dear friends. They're more family than friends. And, they had the basketball game after the shooting up in Michigan Stadium. And to have those, Michigan honor the fallen at Michigan State with the way they did, is a reminder for us all, like, keep it on the gridiron. But when life is lost or, it boils down to that's just on the football field, and that those are kids. And my kids grew up hating anything maize and blue, But the rivals are real. But on the side of it all is that these are just kids and families, and I couldn't be more honored to have experienced several different rivals. So, but that's the one that's close to my heart right now, is because of the tragedy at Michigan State.
Yeah, and I've got a good friend of mine whose son's in school there now, and that's the first thing I thought, because he's been coming down here, and they live up in Chicago, and TK went to Michigan. He's got a son who's a sophomore at Michigan State now, and I saw that the other night. And I, being an Auburn grad, it's a school, it's a big ag, engineering, architecture. Not that Michigan's not a good school, but Michigan State is it's a cool place there in East Lansing. And you think about, you come down south, you go to LSU, the Dolphins, Tuscaloosa. What's that like? You're tough. I remember talking to you last year and talking to you off the phone, and our good friends Waller and Susan May, they made the connection for us, because I've always known who Bobby Williams was. I didn't know who Sheila Williams was till you came on the show several months ago. Is a hell of an eye opener, because there's no way that your sons could be successful like they are without you. I think it's a waste of time. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. I want them all to be successul. Okay. I mean, I even have one that went to Alabama. She's still a good person. And she'll be here tonight, but coming up from Atlanta. But the point is, if you look at all the great coaches that I've ever seen, you got to have a great wife, and to have to listen to the criticism and all. You're tougher than a dang Army sergeant. But you're also a kind, gentle, sweet lady, and you've written a book. Let's talk about that, because when you read true life experiences from someone who's been where you have been, are now, and are going to continue to go, again, it's like lifting weights with your brain.
Ooh. Okay, that was a lot. I'm going to wear that crown of having to be the anchor behind, the rock behind the coach, and to raise those children, because that's what I always say. Coaches raise everybody else's children but their own. And that's why Michigan State is a large part of our lives, because they went from babies to having to change. That's the first time we had to change schools. Natalie was going into a junior year high school, and Nicholas was going into middle school, or finishing 8th grade. And before we went to LSU, we had a stop at the Detroit Lions. So that allowed coach to drive back and forth and commute. So, you have to constantly raise your children, and like, that's daddy's job. That's what he does. That's not who he is, they go to school. Now we're talking now on a 5 and a 7-year-old, and, and the kids come to school, and your dad's team sucks. They can't fire back. Well, your dad's a bad mailman. His life is on ESPN. So you had to teach a 5-year-old to say, my dad's team may have had a hard game, but they're still good, or something. Whatever the level of conversation was, that I could keep them, so they start being grown and getting ready to beat up people in the stadiums. Then I could, they just were embedded in that life. And I hope that I think coaches' children are the most resilient, compassionate individuals, because they have to, I always compare our lives, and we are beneath military families, because they have to up and go, and their dad is, I mean, the sacrifice of their dad is the whole family. But, theirs is much more honorable than coaching. But that's the similarities where, it's kind of difficult, because now you're telling your daughter you're going to miss your, kids that she's gone to school with, which is unusual in this profession, because usually it's 2 years here, 5. You're doing good if you're somewhere past 5 years.
Yeah.
In this profession. So we had 14. And again, the family was down in Detroit. I'm a Detroit girl, born and raised. Yeah. I mean, that's another story, how Coach and I met, me minding my own business, teaching class. Okay. But that means we all had to just 14 years to sometimes make it harder that they had to go. But my kids we're going to go to Louisiana, and we're going to learn about Louisiana and Baton Rouge. And now we're Tigers kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, so my daughter had 2 high schools. So 1 year at LSU, and then we went to the Dolphins. So her senior year. So that was 3 high schools. And Nicholas was middle school, and then he started high school in Florida. So they just kind of had that resilience, I want to say. As I see them now at 32 and 35, I take full responsibility for raising 2 kids. Coach, he was there a little bit, but
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. And I saw firsthand when I lived in Columbus, Georgia, as a TV reporter, 89 and 90, 91, I moved back to Memphis, the military at Fort Benning. Now it's 40,000 troops, 3rd Ranger Battalion, 75th, they get deployed to Panama. Man, I'll never forget being in that chapel service on a Friday night, 3 days after they had jumped in there, and they read the names of the guys that were never coming home. And you have to see those families. That knocks the hell out of you. I mean, and that's tough. And I had so much respect. My brother-in-law, Kurt, was in the Marine Corps 25 years. And I like to jokingly say we were up there at Thanksgiving in his man cave, which is orange and white with giant T's everywhere. Go guess who he pulls for. He's evolved for life. No dog he ever has his name Smokey. But
that's funny you say that. I have a neighbor here in Georgia, and he is a Tennessee. He's got a dog, and his name is Smokey.
well, Kurt, it is Smokey the Hound. That's their dog. That's the mascot. But Kurt has a Kevlar helmet up in his office in his man cave with a bayonet, and it's on and it's sticking up, and it's just stuck on top of that. And I said, "Did they give you that for 25 years of loyal service?" He goes, "Nope, I just took it. I earned it." In places like Somalia and Fallujah and everywhere in between. But you're right. What you do, and I'm telling you, I got 2 older sisters. They remind me of that every single day. But 2 boys and 2 girls now of my own. And I can tell you this, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to just ask you what it's like after the loss, because we see it as fans, the players, the coaches, the families, as they come out of the locker room, outside the stadium, get in a state trooper car and drive away. What are you thinking about after the wins and the losses? More right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Real quick before we go back to Sheila Williams, the coach's wife. Bottom line, folks, Sheila, after a game, your head coach always has to go to a press conference, and even the assistant coaches are going to get questioned as well. I'm old enough to remember the days on the Auburn Football Network after every game, home or away, an offensive and a defensive coach were lucky enough to have to be on the post-game radio show and take calls from some fans. And they were always so nice and understanding, I mean, it was like, all right, who wants to go get smacked in the face with a baseball bat? I mean, you just couldn't make some of these questions up. And it was typically from some guy, I think, from the nervous hospital in a straitjacket who was liquored up, asking these questions. But you're a tough woman. I know a lot about you from Susan and Waller, and it's pretty obvious when you speak, you're real. So after the game, you're coming out, you're leaving. What's talked about, especially if you're in the car with a trooper escort or whatever. Do you bring it up, or does he bring it up? How does it start?
Well, first of all, the trooper escort is only like the head coach's wife. So usually we're in the car. We drive separately because coaches have to be there.
Yes.
5 hours before the kickoff kind of thing. So I'm always by myself. And so the conversation doesn't really happen now at different places. We would meet after the game in a tent. We have a recruit, so it never ends, right? So most people think, okay, so now we got to go recruit. So, I may give them a hug then, but then it's kind of like they're off talking to parents and recruits and that kind of stuff. So there's no consoling time there. Get in the car and we head home. So the only time that I really will probably maybe have a conversation. And it was different with Bobby from the time once he started doing special teams at Alabama. He wouldn't come home until after the traffic cleared. So that meant that he wasn't coming home till 3 o'clock in the morning. So it really wasn't. He may give me a call in between just to say like, okay, I'll be here. So all you can. It's hard because each game is different. Each situation is different. Each coach is different. Some coaches withdraw. I think early in his career, it was one of those things where he just he's always been good at being able to draw that line to home and work. But game day is different. So, now imagine you come home and you got a bunch of your family that's at the game. So they come back to the house. So now you got a bunch of cousins and aunts and grandmas and everything. You got to walk in there. And, hey, everybody, grumble, and usually go to his room and decompress for me. Then he comes back out and he's better. But as we've gotten older, because different places that we went, it was just him and I, or just him and the kids, or just the family. And he's just really been kind of good to the point, and that's what I mean by it's individual coaches. Every coach, I can't imagine what Miss Terry goes through with Coach Saban after a loss, although it's always been said he is really good at after addressing the team afterwards kind of thing, So sometimes you've got it because you can't let everybody go down. So I think that's kind of my role, is to just see where he is. If he feels like talking, then I'll listen. I'll say my Sunday morning quarterback, like, why we keep running the ball down the middle and it wasn't, I'll say that. For later, because he doesn't want to hear that. But nobody feels that pain more than those coaches and players, because they don't go into a game to lose. And so it's like it's depleted kind of thing. It's just like, but then they've got the 24-hour rule because they pack away, review the film on Saturday, as Saturday night. And they moved on to the next team. So it's not like you've got a whole lot of time to be moping about it. So my advice that I give to younger wives is just meet him where he is. If he don't feel like talking, that's not a time to be chitty chatty. If he feels like talking, listen. And if he asks you, which most coaches don't, because they get that, they know what the problem is when they lose a game, what happened. So.
Well, it's interesting because I know as a kid, my parents always take us outside the locker room when they would come out of the stadium at Auburn games, home or away. You want a chin strap, an autograph, a tearaway jersey back in the day. And, but you always, that impression I'll never forget is just seeing the moms and the dads and the family, just huge extended family. And these towns, these little towns that these college football players come from, they're carrying the hopes and dreams of just about everybody back in that little town. You come from a town of 10,000 people, and maybe even if you go out of state, they're still pulling for you. They want you to be successful, and it is incredible. We had Pat Dye Jr. on the show last week talking, and his father, coached at Auburn when I was in school there, and just said, as a sports agent, 35 years, over 500 different NFL players that he has represented, and the conversations that he has with the families. And, maybe the kids don't remember his father, but the parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles are like, man, it gets people's respect. Bobby Williams was coached with Coach Saban for a long time. Y'all spent a lot of time around him. And I don't know Coach Saban. I don't. I mean, he is I know he goes to mass a lot, and as a Catholic, I think that's wonderful. But I just look at the people who have coached with him, and look, some people are going to have their opinions. They're like elbows. Everybody's got a couple of them, unless they don't have arms. But they still got them. But look, you mentioned Miss Terry. Again, I don't know her, but how many times do you see it? Ralph Jordan's a good friend of mine. His father, Shug Jordan, coached at Auburn 25 years. His mom, Miss Evelyn Jordan, lived to be 99, died November 18th or 19th of 2011. Boy, let's be honest, because I've got an alpha mother. Okay, she's 88 and dad's 94. If you don't have that kind of support, Mary Harmon Bryant, you name them, how are you going to make it? Because if you come home, like you said, like my mother always protected my dad from our nightmares, report cards, and whatever trouble we got into. She goes, don't you hit him with that stuff when he walks in the door. She would take a bullet for him. I mean, literally, she would. But she'd also whack us over the head to protect him. I think that says a lot about that. Looking inside. Talk about your book that you wrote and how people can get a copy of it. We got about 10 more minutes, but talk about this book, because I think it'd be great reading for people when they're at the river or the lake or at the beach, wherever, at home. People need to read more, and it sounds like it'd be worth reading.
Okay, so put me on the spot because I never finished the book.
Oh, I knew that, but I'm waiting for you to finish it.
Every girlfriend has said, okay, what do you get? So you putting it out here in this universe is making me feel like, okay, what you gonna do, Missy? Okay, life always happens, so always kind of. So where I am sort of now is, and this is why it's so fun doing this show with you today, is that it's like, because the book changed. It started out with a collection of coaches' wives' stories. And, and that was, I think we were at the Miami Dolphin at the time. So, that was where I was. And I was like, oh, that'd be so nice. Sort of like Chicken Soup for the Soul idea. Those books, everybody, and it would be from where you met your coach and, and how to raise kids and the agony of defeat, the victory of, so those friends that I had. And at that time, Miss Terry might have been the only one that I was going to approach with winning championships, because I think at that point they had won at LSU the national championship.
Yeah.
So, that's always been there. And then and fast forward 15 years later, I was kind of like, that book would almost be obsolete on how fast things change. And when I say old school, new school being having so many young coaches' wives now, and as rather I'm a mentor or just following them, and with social media and this kind of stuff, there's some they've been blessed to be able to have a network of a sisterhood that they can help each other, sort of things. Instagram, there's a few sites that I follow, and it's almost like it I would probably be in a better position to one day be like a Rob Browne and have uh, a broadcast in which, or Zoom or however way, of course, remember I said I'm not computer savvy, in which I can have these conversations
Yeah.
with these ladies. Because what happened last year, I mean, you can read it, but how many times do you want to keep going over reading the same story? And plus that person, that family has probably by the time a book gets published has experienced 12 different moves or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to reevaluate and when I say season, I want to kind of say Coach and I took a little time out because it was just time. It was, and I'm kind of grateful that it happened during last year with the portal and the NIL thing and everything, because that's been, now when we were in coaching, I could get in trouble if I was at Michigan State and a kid came from Florida and he needed a coat. And if I give him one of Bobby's old coats, or if I give him a ride on campus, the violations was off the chain. So that's what I mean by old school.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, no donors, no boosters. All that was hands off of a program that could get you in some serious trouble. And you know more about it than I. So violations was, serious business for the wife to understand and their families, everybody. Like, okay, I can't get you this autograph and then I go and see where you sold it somewhere. That's not, Well, now flip the script, and it's like wide open. It just amazes me of this new era in which college football, it has changed to the point of, and I'm sure it's pros and cons. I'm just speaking on the side, on the vision of me and where I've come from and where I am now to see where it was and where it is now. And it's kind of like, it used to be important to a mom and to a family. I like Miss Sheila. I love Coach Williams. I know if I'm leaving my kid down here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Eugene, Oregon, I know Miss Sheila's going to be there to give him a hug when I can't, or Thanksgiving dinner, he's going to be at her house. That was important. Now it's like, what can you do for me? Can you match this NIL deal compared to, and if Miss Sheila happens to be, with some families though, there's a standard, but that's where it is now. And I did listen to your show. I think, I can't remember which gentleman said it, but he said, which is it was like the words that I was feeling exactly, is like, college football is totally different than what it was. And every season, you know how you usually say, I always say it takes 4 years when they hire a head coach and fire them in a year or two. It's like so unfair because it takes sometimes 5-6 years to build on a program, right? And every season it's a new team because the kids graduate and you bring in and freshmen. But now every season you could lose players because they entered into the portal. You got new kids coming in, maybe, where before you used to have 25 scholarships maybe for freshmen. Now you hold out half because the other half is going to be, so you don't have that. That's the word he said, dynasty. The dynasty of building. At Alabama, we were there 10 years. When it was in the beginning, I always say built by Bama. I feel like we built Bama because when it wasn't fun, when you're trying to convince a Mark Ingram who happened to have a Michigan State connection because his dad played for the Spartans, to convince him from East Lansing to come south. I mean, I know how I was feeling coming, okay, but now I'm a Southern Belle. Why are you move back home? Your home isn't in Michigan. I'll never go. So, that's the hard part. And I just take pride in when you look at these kids, and when kids come back and contact Coach or myself on, they raising families themselves because they're a better man or father because of that's what it's really all about. And I think that's going to be lost somewhere because now it's such a business. I mean, if a donor called you talking about giving money specifically, oh my goodness. And I wanted to say before we go, because I know we're going to go, I got dressed up for you because
No, we got to get you. Let me tell you what, we got to get you back on here again soon, because I've got so many more questions, and a lot of questions that have been texted into me about your son, Nick, Chad Bumpus at Mississippi State, and what's Bobby Williams' next move going to be. It just, every time you're on, you open up so many more doors to like, wow, I didn't know that.
I like bringing the human element to it. I hope.
Yeah, you do. And like you just said, well, Ben, you got a kid that's from, and Oregon recruits all over the country. It's no accident. There are nonstop direct flights from Portland to Dallas, Fort Worth, because they go heavy. And you know what it's like recruiting. Recruiting's about relationships. And if you don't start early, you don't have a chance. And if I'm a kid and I'm going across the country, I mean, my parents, I'm scared of my mother still. I mean, I respect her, but it's great mom. She used to always say, let me tell you something, anything in life, if you're scared and you run from it, it'll find you. 6 months, 6 years, 60, 80, it'll find you. So face life head on. Don't be afraid. Don't go in your house, lock the doors, and stay home because you're scared. You got to fight back. Got to use your head. But when you are a football coach, I mean, it'd be a dream to have a wife like you, because you are helping run that program, because you're going to help set the tempo. That's what you just have explained to us. And again, I tell you what, your daughter, 3 high schools in 4 years, I bet she can go up and start a conversation with anybody, because, having to meet new people.
How about that? I have my first grandchild. So
congratulations.
And they were at Utah. They, the past 2 seasons. Actually, when we were at Oregon, now we were at Oregon with Coach Cristobal for 4 seasons. I can't even remember now, before we took our little time out. Yeah. So that was our time. And then Nicholas was at the New York Giants, and he's kind of transitioning right now. But
hey, Sheila, look, I'm gonna tell you something. We run out of time, and we got to do this again here in the next month or so. I want to hear about them, because they wouldn't be here without you. And this is great stuff. Sheila Williams has been with us. We're going to get her to finish the book. We're going to get you on again soon. Let's take a quick break and be back for more. Sheila, thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thanks, Ray.
All right, let's hunker down with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covering Georgia Bulldogs, all things Georgia, football and basketball, recruiting. A lot going on. And Jordan, we were just on with Sheila Williams, who's the wife of Bobby Williams, who's been in college coaching a long time, 14 years at Michigan State, LSU, the Dolphins, Detroit Lions, and right before he came, and then Alabama with Coach Saban for a long time. I think they've been together for 18 years. And what it's like being the wife of a coach, man. No pressure at all. So I digress too. No pressure at all at Georgia, just winning back-to-back national championships, trying to go for the 3rd. And now we're talking about these new schedule formats. Are we going to add a 9th game? Is it going to be a 7-1? Which rivalries will be preserved? Which ones will be, kicked to the wayside, or just alternated every couple of years or whatever? What is your takeaway? What are your takeaways on these proposals right now? Because Texas and OU are coming into the league in July of 24. So they're about to embark on their last season in the Big 12. I personally love college football. I think it's the greatest game in the world. We're going to figure it out, but I want to know what you think.
Yeah, based on what I've heard and the different suggestions people have had, I feel like the model that makes the most sense is the 3-6 model, which would be adding an extra game. They play 8 conference games right now. You would move it up to 9, have 3 permanent opponents, those rivalry opponents for a lot of those teams, and then rotate so you could get a chance for, a guy that stays for 4 years to get a chance to play in every SEC stadium. And that's really the model that I think makes the most sense. And it seems like there's been more movement toward that model. I think that there was some pushback early on from schools like Kentucky and maybe Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, some of those teams that don't necessarily have those historic rivalries and maybe don't want to be locked in with some of those teams. But it's going to be interesting if that's the model. They have not said for sure. But when you look at some of these teams, and I think two that I've covered make really interesting cases as far as what their 3 teams would be. Start with Georgia. I think Florida's got to be a lock. I think Auburn's got to be a lock. And then it's the conversation of who's the third one. I think it would be South Carolina just because South Carolina is clearly Georgia's biggest SEC rival. But a lot of people within the state would want Tennessee because, I always talk about when it comes to Georgia, where you're from, the rivalries matter a little bit more. And people like me from North Georgia have always cared a lot about that Georgia-Tennessee rivalry. Some people have said Oklahoma, hey, that Rose Bowl was so good. Why don't you lock in Georgia and Oklahoma to play? I think it'll ultimately be South Carolina. But then you look at like Auburn, and okay, you can't get rid of the Iron Bowl. It's going to be Alabama. Feel very confident they would keep Georgia, Deep South Soulless rivalry. And then you say, well, do you give them LSU or Florida, or do you try to balance it and say, look, we'll give you Mississippi State, who they played a lot. I know Justin Ferguson at the Auburn Observer talked about, I think that might be the game that's been played the most as far as Auburn goes, besides Georgia, is Mississippi State. Or do you, it kind of becomes, do you want to balance the competition or do you want to play sort of a historic rival? So I think that's the model that makes the most sense. There's no reason that, as long as A&M has been in the conference now, Georgia has still not played in College Station. I mean, they've got to avoid that once this expansion happens. But I think there's still a lot of conversation to be had, and maybe we'll find out a little bit more come probably May when they get into spring meetings. Maybe there'll be something that comes out of that.
And I'm with you on these rivals. I like the 3-6. Auburn, historically, Georgia, the most played opponent. Georgia Tech was the second most until they discontinued it in '87 when Tech went to the ACC. And then it was Florida and Mississippi State, because remember, Auburn and Alabama, not that we were around, from 1907 to 1948, the 41-year hiatus over the per diem, $3.50 or $4.50 a day. They couldn't decide, so they quit playing for 41 years. So
that was worth it.
Yeah, for $1, $1, Winthorpe, pay up, Mortimer. But I like the 3-6. I love that LSU rivalry for Auburn, but also love the Florida rivalry. So Auburn, and then Tennessee, I love. Auburn really, I mean, the LSU is newer. I understand that. But for Auburn, it's always been Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. They talk about the 3rd Saturday in October, Tennessee, Alabama. The 4th Saturday in September, when I was growing up, Auburn and Tennessee. That was the game. And I like what you said. Georgia, it's a funny state. Depends on what part of the state you live in. But if you live in North Georgia, up there near Chattanooga, north of Dalton, yeah, it's going to be Tennessee. If you live up at Lake Hartwell, might be Clemson. Used to be a great rivalry. South Georgia and Auburn, yeah, they've got they're hemorrhaging with rivals.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a good problem to have, I think, especially because we see so many rivalries go away. And I'm of the mindset, having followed this team as long as I had, I wish they'd play Clemson every year.
I do too.
And there was a run there where like in the '80s, they played really regularly. And maybe you see, I don't know if you'd see them play that every year, but if you go up to 9 conference games, obviously that means you only got 3 non-con. You'd probably play one really good opponent, maybe one group of 5 opponent, and then one FCS opponent with those 3 remaining games. But, I like them to play that. And you mentioned Auburn, Georgia Tech. I always like that. Tennessee, Georgia Tech has had some good games. I kind of like when they keep the regionality of some of these non-conference games, because that's going to be so important now because, we got USC and UCLA going in the Big Ten. So I think the more that they can kind of keep, somewhat of the regionality of the sport together, especially the SEC. I mean, you can kind of take advantage, because I will be interested to see sort of the fallout of the Big Ten changes, because I mean, I think that really will hurt football on the West Coast. I mean, our teams, our fans really going to be following, it quite as closely, because some of your biggest powers are moving and playing Midwest teams week to week.
Well, it's just like one of our previous guests, Jimmy Ott, said this morning that UCLA's athletic department is over $100 million in debt. They don't have a choice. And you look at Southern Cal and UCLA, two iconic brands. I think them leaving when it really happens could be, that it is the canary in the coal mine. I think the Pac-12 is on life support right now, because what about Arizona State and Arizona? They may go to the Big 12. Oregon and Washington. If Phil Knight, with his money and influence, can't buy Oregon's way into the Big 10, who can? And speaking of big donors, I understand that Red McCombs, I just got this, Red McCombs, legendary owner at age 95. The McCombs School of Business at Texas, numerous athletic facilities and everything. He was there at age 95. He was Texas's, Jimmy Rain type, big Bobby Louder type, legendary donors that would give their last breath for their alma mater. And that's a big loss for Texas. But I think about Georgia and Clemson, Georgia, South Carolina. It was late in the year, Herschel's freshman year, 1980, that 13-9 Georgia, South Carolina matchup when George Rogers fumbled the ball late in the game. But God, I remember that game like it was yesterday. Georgia's got so many, and I'm curious if you had to ask Georgia fans right now, again, pick their top three rivals that they said, we're going to keep them. If nothing's going to keep us from keeping these rivalries.
Yeah, I mean, the two that I think are locks will be Florida and Auburn, and then I think it's a mix. I mean, I based on fans I know, I think probably more people would want to see Tennessee, but I think it's gonna be South Carolina. But I think there's probably a healthy mix, and there's been some really good games played, and I'll tell you one that I wouldn't mind seeing be in the third. I just don't think it's going to happen. Would be Alabama. To have them play every year, and those early 2000s, they played a lot of really good games. I think about 06 or 07 when they went to overtime when Matthew Stafford hit Mikey Henderson for the touchdown. Like that, there's been some really good games played in this rivalry, and then you crank it up, given that it's Saban and it's Smart right now, and we don't know how much longer that Nick Saban is going to coach. Why not guarantee, that they're going to play each other every year, which, we keep thinking, well, they'll play each other every year. Didn't happen last year, wound up being LSU in the SEC title game. I get why they may not want to do that, especially right now where these two programs are, is say, let's kind of separate them. So, we could maybe get a couple teams in the playoff. And obviously when it expands, maybe even 3 teams in the playoff. But, I wouldn't mind seeing that. But if I had to bet on it, I think it'll be Florida, it'll be Auburn, and it'll be South Carolina as Georgia's 3.
Yeah. And I respect what you're saying there. I'm just surprised it won't be Tennessee, because that rival, but I understand the South Carolina rivalry, but more, again, it's a good problem to have. Let's talk real quick about this Georgia basketball. Mike White, you got to consider him as a possible SEC Coach of the Year. Quickly tell us, are they making inroads in the Metro Atlanta area from what you can tell in basketball recruiting? And what is he doing differently than his predecessor, Tom Crean, was doing?
I think that they've made good progress. We're still kind of waiting to see what they get. They signed one kid from Decula outside of Atlanta, and looking to add to it. They had 11 guys on hand for that Kentucky win a couple weeks ago. And I think what you saw from that group was a healthy mix of what you're going to see from the staff. Several guys from the Atlanta area, Grayson High School. Trying to think of some of the other places some of those guys were from, but also guys from Alabama. I mean, guys, I think there might have been a guy or two from Florida. The thing that Mike has talked about since he was hired was we're going to recruit the guys that are right for Georgia. If they're in the state, then great, we're going to go get them. But if they're from other places, then we're going to take advantage. And the best player he signed in this 2023 class was from Florida. And I think it was a guy that had connections with that staff because, Mike brought two of his assistants and also several support staff members from Florida. So I think that helped as far as having that connection, those relationships beforehand. But I think it's still too soon to say. The best player they're going for in 2024 is also from Florida. He's a 5-star. Someone close to the program told me they think he could be the best player in the 2024 cycle. If you get him, I don't care where he's from. If he's from Alaska, if he's from Canada, I think that's got to be the approach. And I think that's the way they're taking it. It's not, if you're from the Peach State, we got to have you. It's like, all right, the guys we want in Georgia, we got to get them.
Yeah. Well, it's always, if a kid's in state and Georgia wants him and he loves Georgia, you're not going to get him. But there's so many kids in Georgia that sometimes they can be a superstar and they just want to leave the state. That's what happens. That's where Clemson and Auburn historically have really done well in recruiting. And Jordan, looking at Georgia as they get ready to kick off spring practice, we talked a lot about the quarterback room, Gunnar Stockton, Carson Beck, and I'm leaving one guy off, and that is Singleton. Yeah.
Brock Vandegrift.
And Brock Vandegrift. Yeah. Brock Vandegrift. They're all big guys. Stetson Bennett was maybe 5'10", who cares, whatever. But what do you think Georgia's going to try to do now with Mike Bobo as offensive coordinator? In your opinion, what differently will they try to do? My take is they've got so much talent that he probably knows what to do. But when he left Georgia and Mark Richt's staff after the 2014 season, there was a big difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was sort of the beginning of the end. I mean, you hire Brian Schottenheimer, and it just doesn't work. And, when it comes to Mike, I think it helps tremendously that he was on this staff this past season. So he got to see how things operated, how Todd Monken went about his business. And I'm sure there will be some changes, but I don't think it's going to be anything drastic. It's sort of a situation when you look at a guy like Mike Bobo. And I think a lot of people have done a really good job writing about this. I know Seth Emerson with The Athletic wrote a really good story talking about how he sort of evolved during his time as offensive coordinator, kind of spreading things out his last few years, and they had a lot of success. So I don't think it's going to be dramatically different. I will say I am really intrigued what changes, if anything, with the quarterbacks, because, going into this year, I really felt like it was going to be Carson Beck. I mean, he was the backup with Todd Monken calling the offense. I really thought even if Todd stayed that it was going to be a 3-man race and whoever performed the best during spring ball was going to win it. Well, now, I mean, you've basically got to reset as far as the play caller. And, if you feel like you had a leg up coming into the spring, well, you probably don't necessarily have that. I'm not expecting anything drastically different. Some people have made jokes about, well, the fullback's coming back. No, I don't think that's going to happen. You're not going to see Brock Bowers lined up behind the quarterback trying to make some blocks, although that would be pretty fun to see. And, maybe we could get that in some packages or something. But no, I don't think it'll be drastically different. He'll have a big challenge because I talked about this too with Todd. Even if Todd Monken had come back, it was going to be hard for them to follow the 2022 season because of everything they've lost. So, I think people may be quick to criticize Mike if things aren't perfect. But I think that could have happened had Todd come back for 2023.
Yeah. Say real quick, folks, go out and give with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get. We are most often going to see the face of Christ in the least among us. And we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Do us a favor. We love doing this show. Help us grow. Hit the Patreon button at the top of the Sidelines.live website, $5 or $10 a month. Help us grow. We're expanding, and it takes your support to do it. Jordan Hill, let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you, because I love this has been really good about these rivalries. I'm sure you're probably writing a lot about it, but where do they go to keep up with you?
For sure. Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill and at Dogs247. And I think we got a little bit less than a month till spring practice starts. So it's kind of trying to enjoy what's a little bit of a calm before the storm, but I'm sure there's still going to be no doubt a lot to talk about. Men's basketball season ending and keeping up with recruiting and keeping up with whatever else comes our way.
Yeah, and you know what? You just mentioned something about Brock Bowers and the fullback and all. If you're a young football player, deep snapper or fullback, you talk about longevity. You can play a long time doing either of those positions, and then running back by committee. Again, give me your top 2 tailbacks for the Dogs heading into spring practice.
I would go with Kendall Milton, who was hurt for a little bit of last year, but he wound up leading the SEC in yards per carry. A big part of that was because he didn't play that much, missed some games. And then also Dejon Edwards, I'd say he's next up.
Yeah. All right, folks, we'll be back tomorrow with you. Great show. Thanks to all of our guests, all of our listeners. Check us out on the website, sidelines.live. If you miss it live, go hear it on the website later, or hear it on different radio stations like Sports Radio FM 104.7 and Cookeville, Tennessee, up on the Cumberland Plateau. Great show. See you tomorrow.